I'm Jim Cates, and I will be reading from the chapbook Metes and Bounds, which was published by Accents Publishing in 2010. Metes and bounds are the boundaries of a plot of land identified by its natural landmarks. All of the poems in this little collection acknowledge or establish boundaries. If there is a logic in the poems in Metes and Bounds, it is a movement from more concrete physical limitations to more notional, abstract ones. Stakes. This is my territory. I mate only on the edge of it. I prowl the perimeter up to the river and down to one certain tree. Where is the center? I have never been in so far, but it is no less mine. Surveyors never work alone. Somebody holds the line. A lake in the woods. A cloud. A lake. What do you want? A gazebo? I won't have it. The odor of new cut wood mingles with rising steam from a silver tea ball I steep from my next door neighbor who's no good at anything but literature, although he sits and dawdles over a cup of herbal tea, all decked out in his big game hunter's kit, a blank verse epic poem in camouflage motley, and grumbles away about the Republican lock on local politics, while an election unrolls somewhere beyond our horizon, there where smoke lifts the sky on its shoulders over the hill. I'm restless. I've been tired of nodding my head for 20 minutes now. Out on the water, there's something doing something I don't understand, maybe a tumbling log or maybe an otter. So there you are. That's what my life is like. Take it or leave it. A cloud, a boar, a lake. Snapshot, New Hampshire Path. The ruined tower of a white pine stump stands like an empty Norman monument of conquest and defense. There is a girl who climbs with diffidence the icy road, balancing on a clump of snow with such intent that her whole body from the knees is bent. She keeps herself in temporal suspense from falling on her rump. Just as she executes an awkward jump, I swing my camera, catching her descent and its small consequence. Traipsing. We meant to work. New snow carpeted all the tempting trails and veiled the wood I'd stacked against this day. We should have hefted it to the pickup and ridden it back to the house. But hell. The sun was shining, as my wife would say, meaning it's obvious, and the woods were lovely, light as they can be when all the leaves lie underfoot, and the truck had busted a front tire. Here's to the day, the kids whacking at hemlocks with a broken beech, the grown-ups chattering lazily, the grouse keeping quiet, and the deer nothing but footprints. And here's to hot apple cider and cold beer. Pastoral. This is poison. David fingers something budding in my backyard. Kneeling in the mud, David says, otter. He shows me where the beaver dragged a poplar sapling to the river, where the elderberry topped on a clean bevel shows the mark of browsing at the level of last season's snowfall. Finds the high bush blueberries in the naked underbrush. He, in the cool evening, for a moment rightful owner of my garden. I, a spiteful creature in his footsteps, naming all the animals and their habits, birds by their calls. The northwest wind drums yesterday's blizzard into a victory dance, 4 feet thick, over the budding crocus and daffodils. We scatter all our store of sunflower seeds and popcorn for the puzzled birds. Split wood lies like Shiloh's dead under the blossoms. This Eastertide, it is winter resurrected to preach the annual triumphant sermon on the impermanence of burial. Good Friday finds us shoveling out the cars in perfect sunshine. The day as long as ever, white as a lily everywhere we look. A hiss of hail on the new grass. Stones the size of my whitened fingernail flail the daffodils into confetti for half an hour, as if you had said, I'm leaving. And afterwards, ice dissolving in the furrows around the fisted fiddleheads and pursed tulips nodding in their slashed foliage, as if you had said, I didn't mean it. I have washed my hands of winter in the spring dirt, grubbing for granite, first fruit of the garden every year. The pallor has rubbed off on my shirt, leaving my fingers rich and dry and brown. My arms have taken to the spade like a swimmer lapping out the first long rows where the seed will lie like beads, brimming in the wake of summer, tangling upward clean as the sickle's blade. My legs rock on the slow heave of the year, learning to balance once again to the roll of shifting earth, to the light wind off the river, to the rhythms of dip and swell, of dip and swell. Learning to shoot. My father leaned on a fence post, a hard stone's throw from empty cans balancing on a rock wall or hung like Christmas ornaments against the backdrop of a hill. I pressed the stock into my cheek, settled the tiny knob bobbing on the barrel's lip to its wide V. My left wrist ached with the burden of holding steady. My right index finger practiced the art of being gentle and precise. Popped can, spun, swayed, leaped backward out of sight. The dead hill echoed. One big one bled a little green paint. Winter deer came down to the garden, beveled the apple twigs, stripped rhododendron. In summer, I dreamed of camping out in the meadow above the poison ivy to watch them run by moonlight. Suddenly they stopped downwind, alert, poised in their dappled hideouts. Mark me as one to shy off from, as if they catch the glint of a thought and know better than I my aim. Song. The beach falls to the ground without philosophy. I stand beneath the sound, a chainsaw at my knee, measuring it by what my iron stove can eat, from tapered branch to butt in slices at my feet. I split each heart-shaped round like a young girl's trust, every one I've downed destined to combust. Still shimmering with green, the leaves lie underfoot, stripped and trodden in where blueberries will root. This next poem demands a little bit of a note because I found that when I read it out loud and people don't see the text, they miss what the first onomatopoetic sound is. The sound is not the swear word that you might hear at first. It's simply the sound fuck. Woodpile machismo. Fuck. And my mauls splits birch so white it's no skin off my nose, but like the exposed fictional thighs of a pornographic lover, virgin, pale, and languid, blonde, too, I respond. I am maple, ruddy and rough. Hey, buddy, you better believe it. Fuck, I cleave it all. Beech, hickory, oak, and send it up in smoke. Fire and sex all the same to me, a splitter's game. I'm bigger than you, and I wield a heavier axe. My eye is true and blue, my passion hetero, and my nationality American. Fuck, I got a belly like rock, an arm like a goddamn song, and I'm never wrong. Possession. Snow has followed the ladies of yesteryear into the ground. Those bones that litter the yard like sins of an earlier life are broken trees from last December's ice. They need removal. All winter long, we thought the elements had done their worst and left us in the clear. Now is the time of reckoning. It is hard. My Husqvarna snarls its harmonies and slices like a butcher through the devil's own tangle of split and twisted splinters. What standing leaks its own uprising sap? My fingers stick together with the stuff of amber in millennia to come. The slash heap grows, anticipating fire that, ruled by the word of wardens, waits for rain. Scratched and sore, I've piled these branches up. This is the kind of work I used to love when I was younger, when I bought this home with all its acres and promised them my care, a landscape draped luxuriously in green. Now I find the labor somewhat more than I had bargained for. My time is riven like shattered trees, my strength less durable, my patience, well, we will not speak of that. How I resent having to face the past instead of looking forward. I buck the roar my chainsaw utters, that there is no heaven, that ownership is meaningless after all, a deed not worth the paper or the sweat it's written on. But I'm already braced. Doing the worm's work. The 1st April, I am certain I will die, the ground too cold, too wet for planting, the river only a foot down from flood, the compost heap a contradance of bees. I need to be looking toward a harvest. I will turn dirt. Without stooping to pick rocks, I do the worm's work for an hour or two. See how I like it. See how I enjoy the company of worms. Not bad, they say. Not bad for a beginner. In the valley. All morning I have been thinking about it. You know, it. Laying out a plot I hope the zoning laws will allow to take my body when the time comes. Trees have to be pulled, young pines and sprouts of oak, maple, beech, poplar. Even the hemlock I suppose I should leave for atmosphere. Blueberries are ripe and abundant. I carry a can beside me that keeps brimming over, even though I make no conscious effort at collecting. After I've stripped them, I rip the bushes into a brush pile. So are the young and healthy taken in their prime. I have broken one rusted shovel already, trying to pry a rock loose from underground, making room. The stones I will assemble into a picturesque old-fashioned wall. Deer flies snap at my head, I slap them down. The sun is as hot as ever it gets. Ella Fitzgerald croons at me from the radio, but otherwise I am alone. True, I have lost many and much that I love. I have been digging my own grave and never before felt so alive. Knowledge and sympathy. All afternoon, with the crows crying and diving, I had to see what was beyond the apple tree. It was only a short walk. Crows rose at my approach and scattered into the pines. First one goshawk and then its mate slowly flapped out of the grass as well and flew west, but not far. There was another crow, still live enough to move, but not to fly. It cowered under the blueberries, and the silence now of birds rebuked me. I touched nothing. I walked back to the house, listening for any cree, cree that would let me know the goshawks were concerned. Nothing. I know goshawks. I have worried too close to a nest protected by parents and returned home with a bruised shoulder and blood welling on strips the length of my lacerated scalp. I do not know the poor crow's story, but I heard into the dark evening the cries of the other crows. Domestic archaeology. Wide garish roses promised nothing, but where they peeled, revealing classical blue ruins underneath, I made a start, stripping out urns and pilasters, shadowy temples highlighted in white. Here and there, I'd scraped through to another level, a less sophisticated culture, glimmers of bronze dulled now to indifferent brown, but still suggestive. And so continued until I'd laid all bare, a dry antique skin somebody once loved and somebody else buried. Oh, I confess I lifted that layer carefully, imagining a young couple in their new house making a start, beginning a civilization with nothing to build on or scrape off, nothing but lathe ribbing and horsehair, the clean, dusty plaster of these walls, and a tin bucket of homemade paste. Still life, house at night. The plumbing slaps, gurgles, creaks like a moored sailboat in a light wind when the tide turns in the palm of night, and I thought I was sleeping. The walls heave not with age, but with the restlessness of adolescence, bumping into the air between them and aching at the close corners. There is a spaceship in the basement, oil-powered, electrically controlled, ready to click and hum deliberately on a stationary voyage to the sun. New Jersey. From an island I have descended, no other word for it, by way of Boston to New Jersey, the roads so numerous and interlaced a map can't hold them all, and everywhere I go, I'm lost. You got me into this. When I look up into the sky, I am used to saying Aldebaran, Via Galactica, Mars, Draco, Cassiopeia, while you look up and say stars. But you know your way around. That's where my uncle fell to his death. That's where my ex-husband lives. That's where I was born, you say to me. Elizabeth, Edison, the iron-bound. Customs. Major borders I cross easily. National boundaries, state lines offer me no resistance. See how suave I am at the right times, opening my luggage, smoothing my passage with the right men, flaunting my passport, moving like a universal citizen. But now put me on the tarred edge between two towns where the road goes black and gray. Watch me fidget and don elaborate disguise, only to turn myself away like a bumpkin with the wrong stamp, or a smuggler with his outlawry who spots in time the guard's temper. In the land of the formerly married, there are no virgins in this country. Every woman sleeps with experience and is the reluctant lover of complexity. The blood that runs between their legs is the blood of time. I am a newcomer in these parts, but I know a little of the language, picking it up in phrases from the natives. Tonight the kids are with their father means I am welcome. the wrist. Bones rise under the skin like sharks in shallow water. Here the skeleton shows itself. So wise uncles prophesy the grown size of small children by the span of their wrists. And so I kiss the hollow of your own, making love to the bone. The faucet. I am not so easily turned off. All night the hot syllable of my name will tap at irregular intervals onto the cold and ringing porcelain of your most private room. Twist until the clean metal burns bruises into your sleepless hand. I have found a way to keep the water running, one tear at a time. Arcturus. 2 weeks ago, the lake was frozen. We knew the stability of winter and walked that windswept plain as ours. The quake we felt when the ice boomed was insubstantial, a dream reflex. We lay flat looking at the stars. Last week, the ice melted. The spring pumped a shifting life under our feet with regular, insistent power. I plunged in, breasting the icy water to make the center of the lake mine, ours for one last time. Tonight, I shiver like a cracked pane. Arcturus shines steadily through the east window, saying, you cannot walk on water. Be up, be gone, be scattered like that prince the wailing women gather up in baskets in the high water hope of resurrection. Places of permanent shade. Through the long light of afternoon, we go on descending. We never made it to the top. Where the wind started to bite with small teeth, you looked up past scrub pine along the trail to rock gray and naked as the late November day, and we turned back. We had come thinking we might fall in love, having accomplished the preliminaries, indulged in correspondence, discovered complementary signs, and fit our bodies into complex knots of passion. Acknowledge now it will not be so. We dawdled too long at the scant timberline and will have to work our last way in the dust. Behind the erratics, in places of permanent shade, snow lingers from last week's light fall, like animals that can only freeze for defense, immobile and vulnerable under our eyes. The end of the story. Gone now, and I, a fox startled late when the flushed grouse burst from snow underfoot, paw frozen leaves, worry a lost feather, go on, hungry. Three weeks. The wind has shifted after 22 days in the southeast, while the window panes groaned and wept cold tears. I take my boots off the stove where they steam, unhook my t-shirts and my heavy jeans from the ladder backs. A whole gathering of empty self hung around the kitchen like a family awake at false dawn, distracted, half-dressed, perking black coffee and hearing the news of a funeral to be arranged for, and walk out at night without the help of imagination to name the old stars in their new settings. How can there be a war going on? How can there be a war going on when the window I look out is suffused in morning sunlight and one tall pine after another marches into the drowsy distance. Where is this so-called war? Certainly not here. Certainly no one I know squats under the scream and wheeze of artillery, trembles with a premonition of ambush just over the next sandy rise, or steers with skill the heavy machinery of war. And no one I know cowers underground and counts seconds between the whining throes of falling bombs, holding close the children, a word which by itself cries out the pathos of peace and the absolute calamity of war. Oh, look, a funny squirrel has found the corn we left for finches to eat, and overhead crows circle, take off, and land freely all around. Somewhere far away, there is an indistinct noise, traffic along a busy highway, not war. After one war, a grouse goes off like a landmine. I take the blow full in my breast, step backward against rocks laid down millennia ago by a smart glacier precisely here, and weep bitterly for the quick deer, the displaced fox, the white birch trembling overhead in the gentlest of breezes. The dead. I would like to leave you to bury each other, but you won't. You keep rising out of the falling dust, refusing to lie still long enough to smother. You throw down in transparent disgust the tools of your unwilling trade and dice like strikers while the spade and barrel blush in the creep of rust. Everything's now at 6s and 7s, long overdue for traditional rites. Striped awnings flap over your grave sites, hell gapes, and the overclouded heavens threaten rain. We, your living, demand fulfillment of this last obligation. Lay one another to rest, and we will grieve. I will go on grieving. Words. I write. I command. The word is an animal to the truth. Sometimes a flower or stone or star, you say. No, always a beast, and one it's up to each of us to bring to heel. I track words through their laughter and their tears. I crack my whip and order them, be divine, love one another. They snarl and pace the line and ravage a carrion meal when it appears. I watch them fly in chevrons overhead, looking for quiet waters. I set out decoys to bring them close enough to shoot. After the first, even the last has fled. I lie in wait among the quiet reeds for a word to swallow the hook, come flashing up like sunrise and flap gasping in the scupper. Dying, the scales turn gray. A small mouth bleeds.